Good morning, everyone. Happy Armageddon. Welcome to the news agenda with me, Fleet Street Fox, and my two special guests, Emma Kennedy and Donald Trump. I mean Rory Bremner, but it's the closest we could get, and we are going to drop him if Donald Trump joins us, or Kanye, either of them, really. Now, I hope you've taken your pills this morning because you're going to need them. After 3 years of arguing about who the next president should be and 4 about who the last one should have been, America still hasn't decided. But we've got good news for you. We're going to reveal the result live on this show. Now, a president who has presided over a health crisis, an economic crisis, and a race crisis should, you'd have thought, be in big trouble, especially if he's also tear-gassed children on his way to church, been accused of rape, and heard a neo-Nazi had run over 19 people, killing one of them, and then said there were good people on both sides. But the Oompa Loompa seems to have pulled it off, not winning, but creating enough constructive doubt to claim that he might have won. But who did win? Well, probably Beelzebub, because this is the most demonic, devilish, hellish time to be trying to look at American politics. Now, Emma, you've been watching some of this overnight. Tell us what's happened. What state are we in?
Well, I think unless you were... I think unless you were sort of thinking that something magic was going to happen, I think we are at the state where we always knew we were going to be, because this is the first election in a pandemic. There has been an unprecedented amount of mail-in ballots, which are all valid and all have to be counted. And we knew before the election that we probably weren't going to know the results today. It may well take till Friday. It might take a little bit more. But I still remain confident. I still think we're in a very good place. That the numbers, even though Donald Trump has come out and made the outrageous claim that he's won, I mean, there is a reason that he wants counting to stop. It's because he knows that the numbers don't stack up for him. Because I can run you through them if you're feeling desperate and you want to have a little boost.
Yeah, come on, give us some news. Okay. Give us some good news. Where are we exactly?
Now, bear in mind, these are the states that Donald Trump has come out and claimed that he's won. Okay, so in Wisconsin, he's ahead by 100,000 votes, but there are 700,000 votes still to count. In Pennsylvania, he's ahead by 700,000 votes, but there are 1.8 million votes to count. In Michigan, he's ahead by 300,000, but there are 1.8 million votes to count. In North Carolina, he's ahead by 77,000, but there are 300,000 votes to count. And in Georgia, he's ahead by 100,000, but there are 450,000 votes to count. And what should also be pointed out is that a lot of those votes are in Democratic districts. So I really do feel quite confident that come Friday, maybe even before Friday, we will have a better idea of what's going on. But I still remain confident that Biden's going to win.
Donald, what do you have to say about this?
It's all fake news, Emma. That's what you're saying. It's over. It's over. I feel very positive, Susie. I surround myself with positive people. We're all positive. We tested. In fact, We're all very positive. It's going to be a great outcome. And it's going to be like 4 years ago when I stood there, the inauguration with Gandhi and with Mandela, and we had a great time. We're going to do it again. The good news is that Sunderland South, I think, declared first. If you remember, that was at just about 1 minute past midnight. But I think we know two things. Really, we're back to 2000 when I think Bill Clinton said, "The people have spoken. It's just we don't know what they said." And we know is that Kanye West's lawyers have got a hell of a fight on their hands to turn this one around, because we haven't mentioned him yet, but I think he would like us to.
Yes, who knows? That'll be good. Now, Robert Dusty West. Morning, Robert. I think from your question, you're probably from one of our viewers from across the pond. Poor you. Who's yours pick for president? Well, the trouble is, it's not up to us. And the situation that we have is that when America votes, it affects the rest of the world. And none of us get a say in this at all. None of us get to say who we want to discuss Brexit with. And when other nations choose their leaders, we can kind of get over it. And when we've got our first votes being counted, Americans like you don't worry about whether Labour's held Hartlepool South. You just carry on with your lives. To us, this really matters. I would prefer anybody, but not a lunatic, would be my pick. What about you, Emma?
Well, I would 100% prefer Joe Biden. I think, I mean, I don't really understand anybody who's voting for Donald Trump. It's like voting for sick in a sock. He is a madman, but more than that, I think he is properly dangerous. And I have disagreed with the policies and politics of American presidents in the past, but I've never thought that they were introducing a new breed of American fascism, which I genuinely do think he is doing. And it makes me despair that so many people who have seen who he is and what he does and what he is capable of, and they've still preferred him over the safe guy. It's just extra. I mean, I understand that Biden may not inspire people, but he's not a madman. He hasn't got aspirations to be a despot. And we've seen, this is what Trump has done this morning. He has come out and said, "Stop voting the counts. Stop counting the votes, please." And it's deeply undemocratic.
But despots are good. They're seductive. They're interesting. They drag people in with them. They're strong. They're magnetic. This is how Donald wins, isn't it, Rory?
This is the problem. We're discovering that populism is popular.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. Who knew? Yeah. But they're trending. I mean, I'm the same. I'm with Emma. Although professionally, of course, Trump is good for us, but he's not going to go anywhere. Even if he does lose the election, he's not going to go anywhere because he'll have his own television channel. He'll take on Fox News, and he has these millions of supporters. But like Emma, I'd have preferred a hope. I'm still hoping for a Biden victory. It reminds me, in 1990, I had to go to Camden Town Hall where they had the Nicaraguan elections, and everyone was expecting the Nicaraguans were expecting Ortega to win. And I got there in the morning, and it was just, the atmosphere was terrible. All these people had arrived expecting a party, and there were people weeping quietly in the corner because the American-backed candidate had won. And Frank Dobson, remember Frank Dobson?
Yes.
And he in the face of all these distraught Nicaraguans, he said, "I've got a belting opening line. I've got a cracking opening line." I said, "I thought this had better be good." And he walked on stage. He said, "Well, what a booger." This morning, because the interesting thing is, despite all that Emma said, we now know we've had 4 years to work out who Trump is. It wasn't an unknown, but even despite that, there are millions and millions of people who want to vote, and Biden hasn't done enough. And I think perhaps because it's hard. You can't fight fire with fairness. No. He was a decent candidate, but as you said, with all those figures, Emma, it's not over. It's not over by a long, long way. But the trouble is, we're even talking like it's over because Trump has declared that it's over, and that's the very worst thing that we expected it. That's the very worst thing that can happen.
Well, we knew he was going to do this. He's been preparing. He's been prepping his base for this for months, declaring that the election was going to be rigged and it was going to be fraudulent before even a single vote had been counted. But I'm going to take issue with you on one thing, Rory, about him not going anywhere. I think in the short term, yes, you're entirely correct. If he loses, he will be being the usual mouth honk that he always is on every channel that will have him. But he faces significant legal problems the second he stops being president. Yeah. And at least 2 of those legal problems that he is facing carry jail terms. And it's one thing to just go, "Oh, he's never going to go to jail." Well, really? Because do you remember why Michael Cohen, his lawyer, went to jail? Because it was about covering up the payoff to the porn star
Stormy Daniels.
Stormy Daniels. Yeah. That case is still pending as far as Donald Trump is concerned. He was the person who ordered it. So there's that one. And the other big problem he has is tax and tax irregularities, and they carry jail terms. And then the other big problem he's got is that Deutsche Bank have just announced they want their money back.
Yeah, that's true what you say. But also in America, in New York, he's got the new New York Attorney General Tish James on his tail, and she's got her teeth into it. She's going to let go. And
he's broke, Rory. He's completely broke. This is the other thing that everybody forgets. He is broke. He owes Deutsche Bank over $1 million.
More than a million.
More than a billion. A billion. Sorry, a billion. $1 billion. And they want it back. And if he cannot repay them, they can seize his assets. So if he does win in the next couple of weeks, because Deutsche Bank have said they're going after this if he wins or loses, we might have the spectacle of an American president, a sitting American president, having all his assets seized. Imagine that.
We should be fascinated.
Don't take Melania. Don't take Melania.
I wonder how much we could get from Melania. Now, we do have some footage we want to show you. Joe Biden had came out early overnight and made a speech to his supporters in which he said that he didn't declare victory, but said we are confident of victory. There is still more stuff to go. They've obviously got some polling inside the Democratic Party, which makes them think they are winning. That is my phone going. Which makes them think that they are, Emma, you're pro. They've got some polling which makes them think that they're still in contention. And at the same time, Donald Trump has come out a few hours later, 2:00 or so in the morning, US time, to the sound of the Star-Spangled Banner, which is going to follow him everywhere he goes the rest of his life, saying that the election is being stolen. He thinks that they've won and they're going to litigate all the way to the Supreme Court, which, of course, he's just managed to stack. Now, this is Rory, do you want to tell us what Donald says?
We're up big, but they're trying to steal the election. We'll never let them do it. Votes cannot be cast after the polls are closed! !
But of course they can be, because if you're in a queue when the polls are closed, you can still vote. Although it's a bit late now, anyone who's watching.
But what he's trying to do there is trying to obfuscate amongst his supporters and his base by making them think that the counting of valid votes after election day is somehow votes being cast after election day. And it's abject wickedness. I mean, I was astonished to see, actually, although also heartened to see. Do you know the alt-right commentator Ben Shapiro, who's
he's around here all the time?
Yeah, a big, massive figure on the alt-right, very influential. Even he tweeted today, this morning, after Trump had made that absolute spaghetti speech, is that it is no, you have not won the election, and it is entirely wrong of you to declare that you have done so. So when even Ben Shapiro is going, oh, hang on, mate. No, you haven't won. You can't do that. That sort of gives me a little bit of hope, actually.
But you think an election? You think the election?
Sorry, Rory,
yeah, you think an election like a virus, you can't fight it, because that is a fact. Those votes are out there. They are cast and they're added up, and that is a fact. But even that, Trump takes on head on, and it's just he's like a cat that turns up at Crufts, and people say this is a dog show. He says, so I'm here. It's your problem. It's our problem. And this is a serious point about he's delegitimized this process. He's done it all along about the postal votes, even when he was responsible for the US postal system being so inefficient that it couldn't get a lot of votes. It's going to be slow on the voting. So that helped.
He tried to shut it down. He tried to shut the USPS down pretty much. It's extraordinary.
And in many areas and counties, made it difficult for people to deposit their votes. So even something that you think there is a straightforward election process, and one of the big losers of the night is the American election process, because didn't you say in an earlier time, Emma, that the Democrats allowed votes to be counted afterwards, which is it makes it more complicated, and it allows Trump to exploit this.
Yes, the rules as they stand, the Republicans changed the rules. That mail-in ballots were allowed to be counted before election day, but they have changed the Republicans changed the rules so that mail-in ballots cannot be counted before election day. So that is why we now have this lag. It's down to the Republicans. So if the Republicans now turn around and try and pull the stunt of, oh no, you can't count those, that is election fraud that they set up. It's quite extraordinary. But you know what? I know that he's packed the courts, and I know that there is a great big question mark hanging over what the Supreme Court might do. But I genuinely do not believe there will be a judge in America that will rule that legitimate votes cannot be counted. I really, really cling on to that. So
good luck. Good luck.
He's did his best with the Supreme Court. I think people are chanting for more judges, but was it Roy Cohn, his early mentor, who said, "Don't ask what the law is, ask who the judge is," and that's always stuck.
I mean, he's always been mob. He's always been mob, and he always will be mob. This is what we're dealing with. We're not dealing with a criminal mastermind here. We're dealing with a 2-bit mobster who's cheated all his life. That's what we're dealing with. He can't even not cheat at golf. This is who the man is. Cheating is his DNA.
But I think
in the American lexicon, cheating, winning at all costs is the thing that matters. And as Ngozi just asked there, who's winning at the polls? At the moment, it looks like Biden is on 220 electoral college and Trump is on 213 of the states that have been projected to win. There are a whole bunch of states still in contention, and we don't know who's going to get to the 270 first. But what we're talking about here, the state of American politics and American democracy, this is half the trouble, isn't it? Donald Trump's broke, but he's breaking American democracy as he goes. And the fact that it is so fragmented, I mean, in Pennsylvania, they've stopped counting votes because it's nighttime. I mean, in Britain, we just count through the night until it's done. They have machines which break. They have queues around the block and think that waiting for hours in line is a great sign of democracy in action. It's a sign that your democracy is buggered, America. And courts having to decide this shouldn't be happening. There's an exit poll which showed last night 10% of voters in the exit polls thought the economy was, quotes, excellent. This is in a time when 11 million people are unemployed and they still think the economy is brilliant. So democracy doesn't work. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. Rory, Donald, you've broken it.
I think the bigger problem in America is the dissemination of facts and the degradation of good journalism in America because of the man in the White House, that he has taught people not to believe in journalism. And this causes a great problem because, the lies that he tells again and again and again and again and again, people believe it. When you've got someone in the White House who's perfectly happy to push QAnon conspiracy theories, it's this is what we're up against. We're not up against, the fact that American democracy doesn't work. We're up against somebody who wants to break American democracy, and he's sort of succeeding.
It's really fascinating because you'll know Scotty Hughes. Scotty Hughes is sort of proxy for Trump, who pops up on the news programs. As she said the other day, she said there's no such thing as facts anymore. And this is sort of, you can fact check Trump as much as you like, as the Washington Post do, and there are over 20,000 misleading claims, false statements, or just outright lies he's come out with since he was elected. But you can fact check all you like. But there are people out there with it's not the facts, it's what they believe, and it's their experience and the people of those around them. And Scotty Hughes it was an extraordinary thing to say that there's no such thing as facts anymore, but that's where we are. You have facts on the one hand, and you have people who believe things so strongly, they're in their bubble. We're all in our bubble now. We're all working from home. We're all sort of, in this situation, we're all curating our own social media. We all have our own news channels. Trump will have his own news channel. 64% of his supporters get their news from Fox News. So they believe what they choose to believe. That's where we are.
No, it's our opinions that validate us, not the actual valid truth, which isn't really the way things used to be. Now, Amisat asks, is it true that Trump said they want to rob him from vote counting? I think that they want to rob the presidency from him because they're counting the vote. Yes, technically. He said the longer you carry on counting the actual genuine votes cast that are legitimate, that have already, and bear in mind, the votes they are counting are the votes that the lawyers have already allowed through, because there are Republican and Democrat lawyers at a lot of these counts. A lot of them have gone to judges already. A lot of them have been through a ballot system in which ballot boxes have been removed and drive-through ballot places have been shut down and so on. So these are the votes that are the most legitimate, and he's saying to stop counting those. That's
he's basically picked the point where he was always going to be slightly ahead in the count, and just gone, okay, stop now.
Yeah,
just stop now. Stop counting now. I'm ahead.
It's a weird kind of momentum, isn't it? Because there was so much voting beforehand, mailing votes. So the Democrats had that big momentum, and then you knew on the day that the Republicans, they voted big numbers on the day. So the Trump vote goes ahead, and then there's the lag, then there's the catch up, then the mail-in votes come in, and those are strongly Democrat. So that momentum shifts and changes, and you're spot on, Emma. He's picked the moment. He stops the clock when he's ahead, and anything after that doesn't count for Trump, and that's the danger. That's the danger. But you know, these aren't votes that we're waiting to still come in. The votes that are still to be counted have already been received. These aren't votes they're waiting to come in. These are votes that have been received that are waiting to be counted.
Yeah.
And now Lindsay asks, all the way from Leningrad, wow, Biden is a person. How can Americans vote for him? You will reap his tyranny with a capital T. Watch your children. Trumpist, the lesser of two evils. Trumpist is the lesser known demon that was in the Old Testament.
Well, I mean, what I would say to that is, I don't recall Biden waiting to face two cases of sexual assault against him, one for rape. But you know, crack on, Lindsay.
Yeah. Carry on. See how you get. Karen says, I'm listening to this, and yet again, media aren't remaining impartial. I'm literally the only person who's the media, so these two don't have to be impartial, Karen. We all know the mainstream media is biased and contrived and support Biden and always attack Trump. Ask yourself why. For all the reasons we've just outlined, which you can check.
Answer that.
Propaganda at its best, apostrophes at their worst. What hope do you have apart from allowing the people to speak? Good for you, Trump. Fight against the establishment.
The people are speaking. The people are speaking, but Trump doesn't want the people's what they have spoken to be entirely heard. That's the point. If Trump wins, with every vote has been counted, fine. That's it. He's won fair and square. There's no doubt about that. But what Trump has tried to do today is to stop the legitimate democratic process in an American election. And if you aren't troubled by that, then I don't know what to say to you.
Yeah, and you need to bear in mind that although it's the day 2 for us here in the UK, this is only the night of the election in the States. And at 2 o'clock in the morning, 2:15 in the morning, the person who is the incumbent has come out and said, well, we're done now. Now, in the UK, we would be counting until tomorrow morning still. We'd have another 6-8 hours of counting to go. We wouldn't be stopping, about 6 hours after some of the polls closed. That's a big issue. But Donald, this is your fault, right? You've got yourself in a pickle. You've managed to break democracy. You've broken truth and facts and news. And now you find yourself in a situation where no one believes whether you've won or whether you haven't won. So this is actually, you're in a mess of your own making, aren't you?
Okay, in the interest of balance, can I just say something? Okay, here's something. Do you think that the liberal establishment was so complacent that we needed a Trump to shake us up?
I would say,
rather like Brexit, okay, so the EU needed reform. They were complacent. They weren't listening. That the American establishment wasn't listening. I mean, these things happened. Brexit happened. Trump happened. And I think I would argue since 2008, 2009, when they had the financial crash, and people felt then in the decade after that, they felt that they were marginalized. They felt that globalization didn't work for them. They saw that no bankers went to jail. They saw inequality. And when they gave the chance, the bus came along, the big bus of the Brexit stuff came along, Trump came along, and they were there for the taking. So did the liberal establishment, this is, as I say, in the interest of balance, did the liberal establishment, did they had Trump coming and needed Trump to actually wake them up?
I think extremism, if you look at history, extremism takes hold when people don't feel represented and feel marginalized and ignored. And we saw that in Brexit. I remain convinced that if we had a different voting system in this country, if we had a PR rather than first past the post, which I think is a rotten form of democracy, then UKIP would have had MPs in Parliament, and we probably wouldn't have had Brexit. I genuinely believe that. And I think if you look at our Parliament, how many people really are represented by it? There are so many people who feel disenfranchised. And I don't think it's right. I don't agree with anything they stand for, but I don't think it's right that 4 million people can vote for the Brexit Party and not have a single MP in Parliament. It's not right. And that needs to be addressed. And it does mean that in every parliament you will have people who you think of, oh, they're very unsavory, and there will be people on the right and there will be people on the extreme left. But you have to have that in a functioning democracy. And that is where populists, why they do so well, because they know that all they have to do is to grab on to people's anger and run with it. And that's all that Trump has done from day one.
And that's working in an environment as well, on social media, which is a huge thing, because the whole algorithms of social media, they work towards fear and anger. That's what drives it. That's why if you go on, for example, on terrorist, if you look at Google terrorist, it'll send you to the more extreme stuff, because that's what people click on. That's what drives it. So we have so much of a perfect storm. I think we're living in a box set as it is. You know, you think, who's writing this stuff? Well, this is a script. What we're seeing being played out right in front of us. This was the script we expected. It's a tight, close result, and they're fanning the flames, and America's very divided and angry, and it's a nightmare scenario.
Yeah, I think the thing we need to watch out for, or the people in America need to watch out for, is what Trump does in terms of fanning and inciting violence from here on in, because he will. We know he will.
I think the stats are 40% of people on either side don't just think that the other side is wrong or misguided. They think the other side is evil. They're really strongly felt, those divisions.
Yeah.
I know Tony asks, keep asking us your questions, by the way, people. Dig into the comments, ask us whatever it is that's burning a hole in your head or your heart or your soul this morning, and we'll try our best to put the fire out for you. Now, Tony asks, what do you make of Dominic Raab's refusal to comment on Trump's speech? I would make of that he's showing a brief moment, perhaps, of being, how can I put this, actually not partisan and using his brain to some extent. If you don't know who is going to be in the White House, who is going to be someone that we rely upon for future Brexit deals and what happens with the Northern Irish border and everything else, then you're not going to go and attack either side at this stage of the game. You're certainly not going to pick a fight with them.
That's true, but I don't think it's much of a stretch to say I think it's important that every legitimate vote is counted in a democracy. And that's all you have to say. It shouldn't be,
but it is probably with Trump, isn't it?
You're such an old-fashioned girl, Emma.
I know. The thing is about Raab is that he's a constant study in cowardice in any event. As far as I'm concerned, some people may feel differently, but I think when an American president stands up and tries to delegitimize a democratic election, not just insinuate it, but blatantly and and outrageously so, I do think that other leaders in the democratic West need to stand up and go, actually, no, that's not right. Every vote needs to be counted. And at the end of that, if you've won, Donald, then, hurrah for you.
Yeah.
And if you haven't, step aside.
Well, talking of democracy being counted, sorry, Rory, just a minute. Talking of democracy not being, every vote being counted, David Andal, who was selected to stand for Congress in North Dakota, died of COVID and got elected anyway. They didn't take him off the ballot. I don't know yet whether he would still be there for 4 years, his mouldering corpse, or whether he is actually going to be replaced at some point and have a by-election. But they left him on the ticket, and he's technically now congressman for North Dakota, which is a state actually, which has recently legislated to stop some Native American voters who were there before anybody else, remember, voting because they tend to use PO boxes rather than street addresses. If you don't have a street address, they don't want you to vote. It's madness. What do you say, Rory? What's going to happen next in America? Are they going to have their renaissance and their moment where they go, do you know what? This is broken. We need to fix it.
Well, I can't see Trump fixing it if he wins. If he'll just kick on from here, and of course, and then he won't have an election to worry about in 4 years' time. You would think that Biden would be the one who would try to heal the division, but not by going back to a reset of Obama 2.0. He had to take, as I was saying earlier, they had to take to realize that Trump happened for a reason, and go forward and say we've got to reach out. As Obama said, it's not red states, the blue states, it's the United States. And Biden was the guy who I think he realized that you couldn't just go back to how you were in 2016. You've got to bring the country together. Trump, I don't think is going to do that. We will see super Trump, if you like. We see if you saw Trump before, I'm going to super spread a better Trump. It's going to be even. You ain't seen nothing yet.
Oh, he's going to be vicious. If he wins, if he pulls off a win, he's going to be vicious. Absolutely vicious. I fear. If I was in America and he gets in again, I would genuinely go and live in Canada now. In fact, have you seen Justin Thoreau has opened up his doors? He's sort of expecting 400,000 Americans. He wants America's brightest and best to go and live in Canada if Trump wins again. Did you see that? They probably will as well. I mean, why would you stay?
No,
go on. I was going to say again, people say about bias or whatever, but if you're looking around the world and how other governments react to America, they kind of shrug their shoulders now, because Trump has rightly challenged the NATO members to say you need to step up, you need to pay for security. So in some, he said, and also he's woken people up to China, and Biden is not going to change that policy hugely significantly, because so there have been successes that Trump has had, but basically he's a liability for foreign governments to deal with because they don't know who they're dealing with. And at home, the administration is very dysfunctional because, as he said, the only one that matters is me. I'm the only one that matters. And people in his administration, they don't know what's happening from one moment to the next. So we're not just necessarily on a big Trump bashing bandwagon. We're saying in an administration, it's a very difficult administration to work in because it's all about Trump, as it always has been in the last 4 years. And the big is it a good thing to have a one-man presidency when that one man is done and behaves as he does both personally and politically? That's where we're coming from.
Did you see he's a narcissistic sociopath? Did you see the stats? They did studies on all of his rallies. He's personally responsible for killing 700 people.
Yeah,
they've weighed up. They had to weigh up the benefit of having those rallies with the potential electoral cost of however many deaths that may be caused by. Now, Shanice asks, did you know Harris has locked up a lot of Black Americans? Yes, Shanice. Kamala Harris has locked up some Black Americans, just like every other politician in America, because you've got huge problems between your Black and white populations and the disparities, and the fact that one of those parts of your society is more likely to end up in jail for a variety of reasons, including poverty, education, and electoral disenfranchisement, which is why you end up locking up a lot of each other. And it's just not a terribly good idea to use that as a thing to stick to beat someone with. Lots of people have done various things in their jobs that not everybody else thinks is fabulous. But, Mike Holden, hello, Mike, morning. If Trump's declared the winner, will they have to find more fake Melanias? No, because
I love the fake Melania thing. It's hilarious.
But they've got plenty already, haven't they? They don't need to find any more. Yeah. They've got like 6.
This has been running for years now, that there is a fake Melania, and even if it is a conspiracy theory, it's a hilarious one. So crack on.
No, so we just need to wind up a little bit now because people have got to get on with the rest of their day. We've had a slight change, by the way. Biden has gone up another 4 in the Electoral College projections. He's got 224 now to Trump's 213. Pennsylvania is 3/4 of the vote has been counted, and 55% for Trump, 43% for Biden, 2.2 million to 2.9 million it's still going on, isn't it? So what's going to happen next? Let's just wind this up a little bit for people. Where are we going? Trump has said he's going to litigate. He's going to go to the Supreme Court. He's just stacked. Emma told us at the beginning how he's facing massive debt repayments within the next year from Deutsche Bank. He's got a variety of legal investigations going on, but that's all situation normal for Trump. He's spent his life litigating against other people. So that's not a big thing for him, especially if he can get another 4 years in office, because then a lot of that just goes away. That's why he needs this, isn't it?
Well, it doesn't go away. It just gets postponed. It's basically he knows the day he stops being POTUS, he is in significant legal trouble. And he's a guy who has dodged justice for pretty much most of his life. But I mean, you could argue that the stupidest thing he ever did was running for president, because it turns the spotlight entirely onto all his shady dealings. And I think although he has run away from being held accountable for many, many, many decades, I do feel as if that time is running out. He really is on borrowed time in terms of the law.
Donald, what are you going to do with your time in retirement? Is it just golf, or are you going to walk around pretending to be president until the day you die?
I'm not going to go anywhere. I'm not even going out of the room, actually, Susie. I'm still in the White House. I'm still in the Oval Office. I'm surrounded by positive people, as I said at the beginning. And we're gonna. Mike Pence actually said he couldn't get more satirical. He said we're going to make America great again. He said, and that's where we are. But where we are now is that the election is not over. There are millions of votes still being counted, and we won't know for a few days. And if it goes to court, we won't know for weeks. It's messy. Whereas that great line in No Country for Old Men, somebody says it's a mess, and the other guy says, "Well, it'll do till a mess gets here."
Yeah, exactly. And now we face the possibility that on January the 21st, 2 people are going to turn up to be sworn in Washington. One of them with an army at his back, and the other one with some kind of ragtag militia. And we still may not know the result even then. Now, Prajwal asks, is he a businessman or a politically knowledge person? As a businessman, he's neither. The money he inherited from his dad, Prajwal, had he just invested that in a standard market tracker like ISA and never spent or invested or ran any businesses and just spent his lifetime finger painting and picking his nose, he would have more billions of dollars than he's got now. It's the fact he's done business which has made him poorer.
He's terrible. He's a terrible, terrible businessman. He's the only man in history that has ever managed to bankrupt a casino.
But he does know how to win elections. So maybe he is politically knowledge.
Well, but he manages to do this. He has these lives somehow or other, and he has a genius for self-promotion, and it's a work. That's what the J stands for. Donald J. Trump. The J stands for genius. Did you know this? So it's what he does. He is an extraordinary phenomenon, as that P.J. O'Rourke calls him. The abominable showman. He's here. He's still here. 3/4 of the way through the election, he's stopped the clock. And he's not going anywhere. He's still standing.
And Ken says the Democrats will send out the Antifa again and blame Trump. You wouldn't have the Antifa if Trump wasn't there, Ken. If you don't like the Antifa, then Trump is kind of the reason. All of this, the tribalism, the extremism, whether it's the Antifa or the Proud Boys or Trump or Bernie Sanders, leftists or anything else, the reason you've got these extremes is because the other one exists, and they all survive because there's a fight and a clash. And that's where Trump comes up in the middle of that and sucks up all the life out of everything and all the anger, and that's what fuels him. If we stopped being angry, maybe he would just go away.
I mean, the thing to ask yourself, Ken, is there was never this problem in the last 20, 30, 40, 50 years in America. And the reason that there is because there is a highly divisive man in the White House who is living, and he's like a parasite living and breathing off of people's anger. He wants to make people anger. It is in his interest that there are these horseshoe politics where you have the extreme left and the extreme right. This is what he is living off. And
yes, it's a broader thing.
Take that out of the equation, you won't have that.
It's a broader thing in society as well. I mentioned about social media, but we had this thing in Britain about the beaching cuts where they got rid of whole loads of railway lines and railway systems. There used to be several stops between calm and anger. Okay, you could have disappointment, you could have irritation, you could have dismay, you could have frustration. All those stops have gone, and now we have to go with our British HS2 system. We seem to go straight to anger, and that has been fueled by politicians, and it's fueled by politicians particularly. Like, the weird thing is, now we're in this era again of strongman politics. We see it with Bolsonaro, Orban, Duterte in the Philippines, Erdogan in Turkey. This new generation undermining the institutions that were set up 40, 50, 60 years ago to undo the damage by the last generation of strong men who came out of difficult economic circumstances in the 30s, Hitler, Mussolini, those guys, and they're back again. We're in an extraordinary. We didn't see them coming really in the last 10 years, but they're here now, and they've been voted for by a lot of people, as you said, Emma. You know, people are voting for this. That's why we're here.
People buy Coldplay albums, as Superhands once said, and they can't be trusted. Now, there's two bits of good news we want to wind up on, everybody. First off, Nebraska has finally voted to change its constitution to end slavery as a punishment for crimes. Now, they haven't. 26% of them weren't sure about that. They wanted to keep it. 156,000 people. They wanted to retain this as an option as a punishment for crime, because they haven't used this recently, but they used to use it to punish former slaves. If they did something wrong, they'd drag them back and make them be slaves again. So finally, Nebraska's got rid of that. Thank you, Nebraska. And secondly, and perhaps the best news of all, Kanye West spent $10 million and got 50,000 votes across the states, which is like nothing. One of those he actually cast himself while spoiling his ballot and taking a photograph of it. So genius move, Kanye. But he has said he's going to stand again in 2024. So hopefully we'll have only someone who's just merely mentally ill as president in another 4 years' time. And that's something to look forward to, isn't it, Em?
Oh, I mean, it would be very easy to just scoff at Kanye, but I genuinely think he needs to be under the supervision of professionals.
And, in Britain, Kanye West would be a constituency.
Yeah, yes, it would. Or a tube stop.
Kanye West.
Or a tube stop, Kanye West. Yeah.
Yeah, well, we have our own Kanye West. He's called Gaza, and no one could ever imagine Gaza being elected to office. Well, really, as much as he loved.
See, now you've said that, I would be almost prepared to put a bet on that.
Boris Johnson's on the phone to him as we speak. Gaza, I say, Bean, would you mind?
I just say, Susie, that is an excellent impression. And Can I just say that? I put the baby to bed. I'm now the father of. I've now got a reproduction figure of. Is it 6 or 7? I think I got a reproduction. So, could I just say to your viewers that if you came into contact with me in the last 10 years and have a child, get a test.
There you go. Sensible news. Sensible news for everybody. A sensible advice. Thank you, Emma, and thank you, Rory, for joining us. Thank you, everyone in Leningrad who was watching, and everybody else who is. Hopefully, we've given you a little bit of extra information about the state of play. Don't despair. There are still lots of counting to be done. There's still lots of things happening. Trump is doing as expected. Nothing is surprising yet. So let it all play out for a week or so. Remember, Hillary didn't win the popular vote for about a month. So there's everything still to play for. Thank you for joining me, everyone. Thank you for watching. And look after yourselves out there. Watch out for Beelzebub. Bye.
Bye.